jump into our United Black Agenda presentation. You have a really great presentation ahead of you. This is like New Jersey's Big Six, right? When you think about the Big Six of civil rights, New Jersey, we have our own. And I am so thankful they answered the call to be with us today. This panel will pretty much be led by President Smith, pretty much allowing you all to share what the vision was when creating the United Black Agenda, and as well as our many victories as a coalition, and the things that we are still taking on today. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to President Smith, and we look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. And thank you for all you do as a coalition.
Good morning again to everyone, and to my UBA brothers and sisters. Always good to see you, and I appreciate each and every one of you and all that you do, more than words can say. For 3 years, we have worked together officially as the UBA and have become a cohesive force known by politicians and leaders statewide as a force to be reckoned with. Prior to us forming this alliance, the powers that be would try to peel us off individually, one by one. But now when one of us gets a call, we call everybody else to ensure that we're on the same page and that we're not being peeled off one by one. We have no president of the UBA. We are all equal. There are no egos. There's no drama. We get the job done. And Black and brown folks all across the state of New Jersey are benefiting from the work that we are doing and that we continue to do. So I want to give everyone an opportunity to talk about their experience in regards to how they believe the UBA has been able to be as productive as we've been over the years. And I tell you, it is something to see all of us together when we walk through the halls of the State House. It's powerful, and this is a powerful group. And I commend each and every one of you for all of the work that you've done and that continue to do. What I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the Godfather. And for those of you who don't know who the Godfather is, that's none other than Jerome Harris. He has gone in front of us to lead us. He's walked beside us to guide us, and he walked behind us, and he's got our back every step of the way. And this UBA would not have been possible. And it's because of the work that Jerome has done over the long haul of the years that has enabled him to keep us together and keep us on the right track. So my dear brother, I know you in South Carolina. I hope the weather is good there for you and the family, and we're looking forward to hearing from you right now. Jay,
thank you, Mr. President, and congratulations to the state conference on your first virtual conference. And I can say from my experience working with other organizations across the country, all of us are having technical troubles and difficulties, but it's good to be connected, and we should all be thankful to God that we're as safe and well as we are and as connected as we are. I'm just going to give a brief historical component element for the United Black Agenda. The work actually emerged out of the voter registration, voter education work in the 2017 gubernatorial and legislative primary situation. Marcus Garvey says a people without history is like a tree without roots. And we, in terms of doing this, have to go back and recognize our roots. Each of the participating organizations have deep roots themselves, but the UAB has this unique situation. In the fall of 2017, both at the NAACP state conference and the New Jersey BIC conference, there was a whole lot of discussion about anticipation of what the new election would be. Lieutenant Governor Gradano and Phil Murphy were running. We saw that Lieutenant Governor, then candidate Oliver, was being nominated, and we were coming out of the Chris Christie era. So we had a New Jersey election transition. So there was a need to talk about that. So at BIC, I facilitated a session where we focused on what we're going to do the 2020 census. There's going to be redistricting coming. But there's going to be a gubernatorial transition, and we need to focus on things like appointments, budgets, and the priorities that we had laid out previously. That conversation was a good one. It included Jim Johnson, who finished second in the primary with 110,000 votes, Senator Ron Rice, State President Smith, Reverend Boyer, and the leadership of the Black Issues Convention, a broad group of people to talk about what should we do, what should we anticipate. Then in November, Carolyn Chang and Reva and Richard were all at the League of Municipalities in the post-election situation and said, you know what, we need to put together an agenda. We need to figure out what we're going to do, and said we're going to talk with the governor, the lieutenant governor, the leadership, minority and majority in both houses of the legislature to push an agenda. And that work has gone forward. In early 2018, we set up a series of meetings showing the agenda and began to do the work. I point that out because I don't know what Richard's talking about. There ain't no egos and there ain't no friction. You know, we Black people, all right? And we feel passionate. You know, so if I care about criminal justice, right, and you're interested in healthcare, you know, I want mine to the top, all right, and we're all impatient. So if there is tension and friction amongst us, it comes from our passion to make certain that our agenda moves forward for our people. It's been a great walk, and I think we should all remember that history and recall, right, that we started in 2017. We're in 2020. We'll be going through a presidential election, the gubernatorial election. So the work of the UAB and the challenges confronting our community to make New Jersey a more anti-racist state, to dismantle systems of racism and the elements and the policies that are in place. The challenge is still there. So our work is nowhere done. We've got things to celebrate, but we've got many miles to go before we rest. And I'll stop there, Richard.
Right. Thank you, good brother. Right now, I'd like to call on my dear sister from Burlington, Carolyn Chang, Association for Black Women Lawyers, and all of the hard work that you've done, walking side by side, holding hands with the fellas as we move through this process.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, President Smith, and good morning, Miss Charlie. It is good to see everyone this morning. I'm going to begin by outlining what I said at a program for a Bar Association event last week with regard to the United Black Agenda. This is how I described our group. I said the United Black Agenda is a coalition of 9 legal, economic, faith-based, and racial justice organizations. We are strategic and organized. And this is what I said to myself, but not to other folks. And where Black groups have been criticized for not being able to work together, we are unified. We support and advocate a 10-point platform. And my section of the platform that I am responsible for, I believe it's moved around on the platform a bit over the last 3 years. I think it started out at number 10. At one point it was number 11, then it moved up to number 9. But it doesn't matter what number it fit into the agenda. It's my responsibility. And that portion of the platform is to include African Americans on boards, commissions, management of state pensions, the judiciary, which is near and dear to my heart as a lawyer, and task force to ensure the administration is representative of our constituency and the state of New Jersey. So after I became a part of the United Black Agenda, I just concluded my term as president of the Association of Black Women Lawyers of New Jersey. And the association decided that we needed to join forces with the Garden State Bar. The Association of Black Women Lawyers of New Jersey is the oldest women's bar association in the state of New Jersey. We were formed in 1975, and we're as relevant today as we were in 1975. So we joined with the Garden State Bar Association, and we created what we refer to as the ABWL and GSBA Joint Judicial and Prosecutorial Selection Committee. And we worked with the UBA, the Legislative Black Caucus, and we advanced names to the administration and to Governor's Council of qualified Black candidates to be a part of the administration and to be a part of the judiciary. We have been successful in moving a lot of candidates through the Senate Judiciary Committee and through the entire Senate as a whole. Our successes include a number of new Black judges on the bench, including Burlington County, Middlesex County. It's our hope that we'll be able to get the logjam released in Essex County, and we'll be able to move a number of judges onto the bench in that county. Essex County is a very important county to the United Black Agenda because that county has so many citizens of color, and right now there are about 13 openings on the bench in Essex County. And what does that mean to me and lawyers? It means that folks who look like me and you don't have an opportunity to get justice done because the bench is down 13 judges. So while we've been successful in moving judges in other counties, we're kind of stuck in Essex County. And it's my hope that the political logjam will clear soon and we'll be able to move some folks onto the bench. Another one of our successes is ABWL and the UBA for the last 2.5 years have advocated for the need and the requirement to have a Black woman appointed to the New Jersey State Supreme Court. We were successful not too long ago. The governor nominated Fabiana Pierre-Louise, who made it successfully through the Senate Judiciary Committee and made it successfully through the entire Senate. We now have the first Black woman jurist serving as a justice of the Supreme Court. The UBA has been busy. My section of the agenda has been busy, but there's still a lot more fighting to be done, a lot more successes that we need, and we'll continue with the fight. Thank you, President Smith.
Thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate you. Now we're going to move on to another one of our dear sisters. She is a brilliant attorney and has added so much to the United Black Agenda. We all know the work that she's doing to assist us with the segregation lawsuit and has come before you many times to give us updates. And we always look forward to hearing from Elise and her sharing her knowledge and her opinion. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Elise Body. Elise?
Thank you, President Smith, and good morning, everyone. It's so good to be among this group, to see all my fellow UBA peeps. It sort of lifts the spirit and the soul to see you all on this Saturday morning. I just to say, I know we are talking about kind of the vision of the UBA and the role that the UBA plays with respect to each of the kinds of work that we do. I and so I'll just start there. I see the UBA as sort of dreaming a new world, reimagining the possibilities for justice in this state. What is so powerful, I think, about the work that the UBA does as a collective, and the work that each of the folks who are on this call today are doing, is the boldness of the vision. I think the challenge for so many of us in this period is to sort of reconceptualize what we mean by racial justice. We're tired of tinkering around the edges. We're tired of playing defense. We want to play some offense. I'm not really when I start wading into sports analogies, I get into trouble, but I do know the difference between offense and defense. And so I think the value of this partnership is, first of all, just to have another group of people to lean on for support, but also for insight about how to sort of move this state to a better, more racially just place. I think the other power of the UBA is that really what we're doing is addressing systems of white supremacy. And if we think about the work that each of us is doing, Carolyn Chang just spoke about the important work that she is doing to make sure that the halls of government are representative and that we see ourselves in the state government and in the state judiciary. The folks on the call who will talk about the very important work that is being done in criminal justice and housing and voting. And all of that is a piece of dislodging systems of white supremacy. And so I feel very fortunate to be part of this work, and also because of the importance of working in coalition generally. When you want to dislodge systems and practices that are so deeply rooted, you must work in coalition with other folks, both because it helps you to sort of understand in a richer and more meaningful way the issues that you're dealing with, to draw on the insights of other people who sometimes might see things differently, and to learn from those experiences. So I feel tremendously fortunate and blessed to be part of this group, and to have also developed friendships with so many of the UBA folks along the way. I'll just say a quick word about the work that I do. My full-time job is teaching at Rutgers Law School. I teach constitutional law and civil rights, state and local government. But I also run a project called the Inclusion Project, which is focused on, more broadly, how do we dismantle systems of white supremacy? And we are focusing most specifically around school segregation. As many of you probably already know, there was a lawsuit that was filed back in 2018. The state chapter of the NAACP, thank you, President Smith, for all the support and the work that you've been doing on this issue, is one of the lead plaintiffs in that case. And it's been brought to challenge the very deeply entrenched system of school segregation that we have in the state, and to use state constitutional law to force the state to do something about it. I will say that I've been surprised, candidly, by the resistance that we've seen from this administration on the issue of school segregation, and their sort of unwillingness to sort of think more broadly about the possibilities of school segregation and what it does to opportunity across the state. and I've heard so many people say that, well, we don't have to worry about segregation, just give us more funding, right? Let's just make sure that we have equality in our school systems, and we don't have to worry about the separate part of it. The problem with that is that separate but equal is never, in fact, equal. And even before the pandemic, school districts around the state were owed $1.9 billion by the state. 930 million of that was supposed to be going to the former Abbott districts, the under-resourced districts. And so even though some of you may, shouldn't assume familiarity, but the Abbott litigation is landmark litigation that has been going on for 30 years to force the state to fund school districts equally. And although tremendous progress has been made, we still have vast inequality across our school districts, and particularly our Black and Brown school districts. So I lean on the UBA for their insight, their sort of political acumen, or the camaraderie, for the friendship, sort of to, we sort of push each other, we pull each other, and I'll leave it there, but thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning.
Thank you so much, Elise. Right now, we're going to pivot to November the 3rd. We all know what happens, and we all know what has to happen on November the 3rd. We have been successful in regards to a couple of lawsuits that we have put in, working in conjunction with Ryan Haygood over at the Institute for Social Justice. In our voting rights case, where the Institute represented the NAACP and the League of Women Voters in the case against Donald Trump's voter suppression lawsuit, which challenged the aspects of New Jersey's election plan. We won. The ruling denied the Trump campaign motion for a preliminary injunction that would have prevented the counting of votes to start before Election Day, as well as plans to allow ballots without a postmark to be counted if received within 48 hours of Election Day. We want to thank them for representing us in that case, and we won that. As you also know, back in July, we put a lawsuit in against the Secretary of State. And because of that, we were successful at making an agreement so that any ballots that were rejected because of signatures, we would have an opportunity for folk to correct those ballots and send them back. Over 10,000 corrections were done during the primary because of our lawsuit against the Secretary of State, and ultimately the agreement that we were able to make. Ryan was not able to be on the call with us this morning, but we have Sister Moultrie on to represent him in the Institute, and I'm going to call on her right now and let her talk to us a little bit about the Institute and the Institute's work with the UBA. Tiara?
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, President Smith. I think that was a great segue. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Institute's work in a few different areas, but definitely around voting and elections. The Institute has been pushing heavily, especially during this moment. I think one of the really great things that Elise mentioned is the role of the UBA and helping us to dream about a new future and what that might look like. I think we'd be remiss to neglect to discuss the moment that we're living in and the role that the pandemic has really played in affecting each of our lives. So not only has it had this very obvious impact on elections and the way in which we vote and what voting will look like possibly in the future in the state, it's also really imparted itself in a few different areas and really around Institute efforts for youth justice and rights restoration. And even a lot of our reparations push is really focused on what it means to not only dream a new future, but to repair harm that's been done at the state level. And that's really what I think the Institute is trying to push for, and what really the entire UBA is pushing for, is how do we identify opportunities and repair harm. In terms of repairing harm, really, I think a lot of the advocacy on the voting rights front was really focused on the connection between the criminal justice system and the right to vote. So unfortunately in New Jersey for a long time, we connected the right to vote to our criminal justice system, therefore imparting a lot of the racial injustices that we see within that system into the right to vote. So luckily in December 2019, a law was passed allowing for people who previously had criminal convictions who are on parole and probation to be able to vote. Unfortunately, that leaves a large number of people who are currently incarcerated still without a vote and without access, further disconnecting them from their community. And unfortunately, the vast majority of those people are also Black. So when we think about what it means to have a voice in the state to be able to promote advocacy, and really the advocacy is only one part. We can come in and we can push for legislation and have meetings with legislators, but we really need people who are going to be able to vote into office, people who are going to promote the kinds of progressive change that we need in the state. And I know especially in the beginning, that was one of the things that we were thinking about, sort of having an ultra progressive leader at the state level and what that would mean in terms of the ability to get policy through and be able to get legislation through. And while I think that we have had several victories, I think there's still lots of opportunity for growth. And unfortunately, dealing with this current moment and the related fallout as it relates to economic justice, as it relates to a lot of racial justice issues and the need to center them at the state level, the fight is going to continue, unfortunately. So I mentioned a little bit also about our work with youth justice. So one of the big victories was also the ability to get an announcement about youth prison closure. What we hope to see is actually the closure of all youth prisons in the state. New Jersey has the worst youth incarceration disparity in the country, in which a Black child in New Jersey is 21 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white child, despite the fact that most Black and white children commit offenses at the same rate. I think that that's a really startling number, especially when you consider that Black people make up just 13% of the state. The larger effect that that has, and the fact that many of those youth are actually from our urban corridor. So despite the fact that they're now being further disconnected from their community physically, there's really this impact that it has on just our ability to bring people back home and really be able to connect them to their community more generally. So while I think in the adult prison population, that really extends to what it means to be able to vote. For youth, I think it means, what does it mean to be connected to a community? What does it mean to participate in a democracy? When I've been taken, usually from, again, these really large metropolitan areas, taken to a facility in the southern or central portion of the state, left without access to my family because a lot of those economic justice issues that we see, the lack of access to transportation for Black families, the lack of even ability to pay for bond or pay for, any sort of restorative justice elements that there may be, really comes with large financial implications. And I think that those things serve to further segregate people from their communities. So we really want to see a reinvestment in community. I think one of the ways that comes is quite literally by asking for a dollar amount of commitment to stop building youth prisons and instead put that money towards programs that will allow us to keep youth in their communities and really address these issues at the start so that people never become justice system involved. But I think it also means an actual reinvestment and an attempt to repair. And so that's why I think for the Institute, one of the big things that we're pushing for, and really the entire UBA is supporting in those efforts, is trying to get the reparations task force. So hopefully people on the call have heard about this legislation, S322, which has been pending for a long time, and we're hoping that it will actually come to fruition. We want to see this task force that's created to really take steps to think about what it means to repair our communities, what it means not only for the criminal justice system and for voting rights, but also what it means in terms of economic justice for the state. So New Jersey has the largest racial wealth gap in the country, in which the average white family has a median wealth of $352,000 compared to just $6,100 for Black families. And that number is the result of numerous things, right? So we know that there's a direct line from slavery to today's system of racial discrimination with regard to voter suppression and mass incarceration and poor infrastructure in New Jersey, and really that rampant racial segregation that Elise talked about. But it also comes to what it means for racial wealth disparities. And I know that someone sort of far more eloquent than me will handle housing on this end. But really, when we think about home ownership and the things that start to affect Black people and the state and their ability to grow wealth and really grow assets at all, it's going to be something that requires a lot of work. I think it's interesting because at the Institute, I'm helping to lead a lot of our student loan work, which is another area where you wouldn't think that there'd be really large disparities. But we're finding that even within that, the sort of economic justice issues and the fact that people can't afford to attend school in the state, the fact that people from communities of color are 2 to 5 times more likely to default than people who live in sort of similar county white communities. how do we go forward and how do we start to address that? And I think in the student loan space, it's also been interesting from a policy level. At the start of the crisis, we felt like there was going to be a new push for student loan reform in the state. And we heard those initial conversations that there was going to be at the national level total debt cancellation. And then it became debt cancellation for people who are frontline workers, and then it became sort of smaller and smaller. And I think that's something that we also see happen at the state level, and even with regard to the voting rights legislation. You know, there was this real meaningful push for restoring voting rights to everyone, regardless of if they were currently incarcerated. And while we're proud of this victory and the fact that there are now more people who do have access to the ballot, there are still numerous people, Black people in New Jersey, who are disconnected from their voting rights, disconnected from their community, and without meaningful action and the ability to vote for legislators who support that kind of bold reform, they're going to continue to languish not only in prison, but really languish and being disconnected from their community. So we hope that, again, everyone will do what they need to do, will get registered to vote, will not be sort of deterred by whatever lines there may be, whatever barriers there are, and we're going to continue to watch those issues and really try to make sure that voting rights are something that are protected at the state level, just because of the impact that it has in all of the areas that the UBA is working on, its effect on our ability to elect people who are going to be against racially restrictive covenants, people who are going to promote things like the desegregation of New Jersey schools, and again, people who are going to allow for voting rights to be extended to everyone, to eliminate barriers, whether it's a signature match law or it's concerns about who has access to polling places that don't have heavy police presence, because we know what effect that has on Black people going to vote, and maybe your polling place is at a police station or a fire station, and what that may mean for you and how really that serves to further voter suppression in the state. So there's still more work to do, but we are optimistic. And luckily with this coalition, I think one of the great things is that we have people to lean on, that there are always moments when we can really come together. And I think the 94% rally was one of those great moments for me here at the Institute, was really being able to highlight that as a people, 94% of us came together to vote for an elected official. And we have to hold that person accountable to do what's right, not only for the Black community, but for the state at large, because we are, you know, a minority, but really soon New Jersey will be a minority majority state. And when we think about what that looks like, we have to ensure that leadership is responsive to us and really bringing us to be a part of whatever the state looks like forward, whatever the New Jersey forward picture looks like. Black people have to be a part of that conversation.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Just real brief. In 2019 alone, you look at what we were able to do with the Independent Prosecutor Bill, the Earn Your Way Out Act, the Voting Rights Act. Ladies and gentlemen, we were able to put 83,000 people back on the voting rolls by passing that Voting Rights Act. The Expungement Bill, the Solitary Confinement Bill, the Driver's License Bill. These are all things that we champion and were able to check off the box as victories. And then moving into 2020, the work that we're doing. Tiara mentioned the fact about foreclosures and evictions. We're in a very turbulent time right now. And it's great to have Eric Dobson in the Fair Share Housing Center. Eric working with us. We've had some success in regards to housing legislation. We're working on some now, and Eric is going to be able to bring us all up to speed in regards to the things that the UBA has been able to do in regards to the fight for housing. Eric, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, President Smith. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and to my colleagues in the UBA. The fight for racial justice is always on, and it's always a good fight when you have people beside you who spare no expense or and use all their wherewithal to bring about racial justice. So let me start by just talking about, you can't talk about Fair Share Housing Center without talking about New Jersey NAACP, because we're tied at the hip. The whole entire Mount Laurel doctrine started back in 1975 when Southern Burlington County NAACP sued Mount Laurel Township for using its exclusionary zoning, using its zoning powers to exclude Black folks from moving into these areas. So when you're talking about Fair Share Housing Center, you have to talk about the NAACP. And so from that history, Mount Laurel 1 in 1975, that had the strongest state zoning laws in the country, we've been able to move some serious work around getting affordable housing in high opportunity neighborhoods. Now, so let's be clear about this, right? America has chosen to use wealth creation through housing. So housing is a fundamental issue, how we accumulate wealth. And so America knows that, so it used this zoning powers to exclude Blacks and Latinos from these high suburban communities, because the suburbs were created for white people, not for Black people. And that was legal all through the Civil Rights movement, through the Civil Rights Act, and even up to 1975, when Mount Laurel 1 happened. So since Mount Laurel 1 in 1975, Mount Laurel 2 in 1983, Mount Laurel 4 in 1986, 2015, when we're going back and forth about these zoning laws, the New Jersey Supreme Court ruled in 2015 that these 350 towns who were still fighting the Mount Laurel Doctrine, still fighting to exclude people of color, ruled that they had to do it. And so with the NAACP help, with the United Black Agenda, Fair Share Housing Center has been able to settle with 320 something towns, now having inclusionary zoning in place where you can have affordable housing in some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in New Jersey. Most recently, Englewood Cliffs. If you know about Bergen County and Englewood Cliffs, very high opportunity, very wealthy community. Through the help of the NAACP and the United Black Agenda, we have an inclusionary zoning ordinance in Englewood Cliffs. Now, balloons and champagne should be popping on that, but that is some serious work with this coalition. And so let me say, moving forward, it is one thing to win lawsuits, as Elise can tell you, is another thing to implement these lawsuits, right? So we have to stay diligent and not just say we've won these cases and we have inclusionary zonings. Fair Share Housing Center and United Black Agenda, we're moving into monitor and compliance. We're moving into areas where, not only will these towns have to do inclusionary zoning, but they have to do affirmative marketing. This is what the President of the United States has been targeting when it comes to furthering fair housing, dismantle these federal guidelines, because he knows these folks will have to target Black folks to move into these communities. That's why he's attacking Cory Booker. He knows what these state laws in New Jersey. He knows a powerful housing law that we have here in New Jersey. He knows these issues. And so the attack doesn't stop. The work of racial reconciliation or racial integration of gaining Black power in this country never stops. It is an ongoing process. My man, Ibram X. Kendi, says, whenever there's racial progress, there is always racist progress. So we have to do our due diligence to make sure that over the next 5 years, there'll be 50 or 60,000 units of affordable housing in these high opportunity neighborhoods, to make sure that Black and brown folks get access to these units. So one of the things that we're doing with the UBA is attacking these issues through legislation, because redlining still exists. One of the ways we know redlining still exists, that our folks are usually screened out from getting access to these units. So they'll look at criminal background checks. So this is something that the UBA is working on right now. Legislation with the help of Senator Singleton, Senate President Sweeney, Speaker Coughlin, Assemblywoman Reynolds Jackson, Assemblyman Wimberly. We have a Fair Chance in Housing Act, which is basically ban the box in housing. This is going to be a big key, that we can have folks, our returning brothers and sisters from incarceration, can return and get access to housing as well. Because we know the quicker our folks get access to housing, the less likely they are to recidivate. So this is something that is key. We got Black and brown folks locked up for small uses of marijuana, which we know, white folks use it at a bigger rate than we do and don't get locked up. We got folks unjustly incarcerated on small traffic violations of not being able to pay fines, and that goes on their criminal record. So this is how they screen us out And so we're attacking this issue right now through the UBA, through this bill that we're looking at the fair chance in housing. We're also working with the Senate President and the Speaker around and getting this rent evictions froze, mortgage forbearance on these other bills, trying to make sure our folks don't lose the wealth that we have accumulated through our housing. And we're trying to do inclusionary zonings and some of our urban areas, because we got our Black folks getting gentrified out. Some of us are selling our homes to these people for $200,000 and turn around, they go out and rehab them and sell them for $500,000 to $1 million. And where are we going to go with $200,000 in New Jersey, right? So these are things that are important that we need to understand how housing has always been the key to wealth creation, and how housing in this country has always been the way that they have limited us to opportunities. I love Ta-Nehisi Coates when he talks about reparations, because he's the only one that really talks about reparations in the context of housing. You can't talk about reparations and not talk about housing, because that's how we created wealth in this country. So the fundamental place for us to have access to quality and affordable housing is to gain wealth is in these higher opportunity neighborhoods, is in some of these gentrifying neighborhoods. So Black folks, stay in some of these urban areas. You know the housing values are going up. Don't sell your house. Don't be undersold for $200,000 and next year they sell your house for 1.2 million. Come on now, they ain't adding up. So I'm sorry, but this is what we're working on to make sure our folks understand the importance of housing and to pass that housing down to your kids and to your grandkids. Keep these and make sure your name is on the deed. Make sure you have access. Make sure that, you don't get swindled into these subprime mortgages and these armed mortgages. So I'll get off my pulpit by that, but we're UBA. That's my people.
All right, good brother. Thank you so much. We have the new kid on the block who we have run into numerous times. We were, our paths were crossing at the State House, and Brandon McCoy reached out and wanted to talk about the work that he's been doing with the New Jersey policy perspective, and wanted to become a part of the UBA. It was great to hear from him and to welcome him into the UBA, to bring along all of the hard work that he has done over the years. So now we will hear from Brandon McCoy from the New Jersey Policy Perspective. Brandon, good to see you, my brother. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good to see you. Good to see everybody this fine morning. New Jersey Policy Perspective, just quickly for anybody who's not familiar, we are a think and do tank, and that means that not only do we do research, but we make sure it doesn't just sit on a shelf and gather dust, because that does no good for nobody. We make sure it gets into the hands of advocates and lawmakers and the media, and most importantly, the public, to ensure that we are shaping the conversation with facts that are grounded in reality and research and data. And so it's a true pleasure to be with you this morning and to be a part of the UBA, to be able to work on issues that are critical to Black New Jersey, because we know that Black New Jersey has been left out of far too many conversations and pushed behind, not left behind for far too long. And a lot of that has to do with the budget. And so NJPP, my organization, we work on a couple of things. We work on healthcare policy, immigration policy, economic security, and a host of other things. But our most important area of work is tax and budget policy. And just from our perspective, the budget, whether you're talking about a municipal budget, a county budget, a state budget, or the federal budget, it should be and is a moral document. It is a document that is meant to secure the resources that all residents need to be healthy and to thrive. And everything my incredible colleagues have mentioned so far, from housing to public and higher education, criminal justice, environmental issues, transportation access, reliability of transportation, all these things, the details are vital, but the fact will always remain that if you do not fund it, it does not exist. And the budget is incredibly important at this critical time when we are grappling with the twin crises of COVID and a recession, where families and workers and small businesses are in desperate need of support to avoid serious catastrophe. And it's important to remember how the state of New Jersey addressed the last time we were in this situation, the last recession that we had. The Great Recession was a housing cost recession, a massive foreclosure. And ever since then, New Jersey has remained #1 in foreclosure. But beyond that, the state took a tact and a strategy of austerity. We cut funding for critical services and programs. We cut taxes for the very wealthy, buying into the idea that if we just do right by them, they'll do right by us, and they'll trickle down whatever crumbs they have left for the rest of us. And we cut our ability and really hamstrung our ability to grow by subsidizing the activity of multinational corporations who honestly don't need it when our small businesses did. And what did we get for all that? We got the slowest recovery in the country. We got the weakest recovery in the country. And in many aspects, we never fully recovered when this current crisis hit. There are many areas where you look at higher education, public education, transportation, where the state still has not gone back on its feet from the Great Recession. And now we have COVID hit. And we have a recession that was already likely to happen because we had 10 years of growth, and that was a record. And we are dealing with two things that are way more serious and way more threatening than the Great Recession was. And so the way that we have responded in this moment has been drastically different as a state than we responded in 2008. Instead of cutting left and right, cutting investments in services and programs all over the place, it has thankfully been more balanced. That does not mean this is a perfect budget that we implemented now, but it does mean it's a budget that retained investments in a way that gives us a chance to recover in a more swift and shorter amount of time than a full decade like we had coming out of the Great Recession. And so when we talk about tax policy, I want to be very, very clear. There is no racial justice. There is no economic justice without tax justice. Because when this country was built and when this country really rose into itself for white people, we had a tax policy that raised revenue and resources at a massive level so that the government could invest in the things that made white families successful. You think about land grant universities, you think about subsidizing the suburbs like Reverend Dobson spoke of. You think about the GI Bill and all the opportunities that came with that for white veterans coming back from the war. That wasn't funded with, just fairy dust. That was funded with tax revenue. And now we go through the 80s and you have this mantra of, well, there is no such thing as good government. And all we see is cut, taxes are bad. And it's interesting because at a moment where finally people of color and non-white families and workers in this country are rising, all of a sudden government is bad. All of a sudden we don't have the wherewithal to raise the revenue to invest in the things that make people successful. And I very, very strongly reject that thinking. Not only can we raise the revenue and have tax policy that makes people successful, but if we do not, this country will never realize its true self. It will never realize its promise. And so when you hear folks say things like, we can't possibly do a millionaire's tax because the millionaires are gonna leave, I'm not worried about the millionaires leaving. I'm worried about people who make less than $50,000 leaving because they can't afford to make it in the state. The millionaires will be here. New Jersey has the most millionaires per capita in the country, right? If we lose one or two, I don't begrudge them, but we'll be all right. What we need to do is focus on the folks who are struggling. Focus on the foundation of our economy, right? Focus on the people who make our society work. And so at the start of the recession and the pandemic, all you could hear about was frontline workers, frontline workers. We got to do more for frontline workers. Well, that lasted until we learned about who was really suffering. When we learned that frontline workers were really mostly Black and brown workers and Black and brown families, all of a sudden it was, maybe we'll have another, maybe we'll have another stimulus, maybe we won't, right? Maybe we can fund this recovery, maybe we can't, we'll see. And so as we think about all the things that make families whole and all the things that enable people to take care of themselves and their loved ones, please always remember, we can pass policies left and right. We can hold bill signings all day and pat ourselves on the back. But if we do not fund it, it does not exist. And so when you look at people needing to access their unemployment insurance and having trouble doing that, Yeah, of course they are. The state of New Jersey under the previous administration underfunded this Department of Labor for 8 straight years. It has the fewest staff and the smallest budget it has had in 20 years. When you think about all the challenges we've had with long-term care facilities and hospitals trying to meet the challenge of COVID, of course it has. The Department of Health, same story, has the smallest staff and the smallest budget it has had in 20 years. And so while this administration has made great strides to turn this boat around, you do not turn around 20 years of failure in 3. It is going to take a consistent, demonstrable effort on the part of everybody, not just the governor, but the Senate president, the Assembly speaker, folks in the counties, folks in every single town, all 565 towns in the state, to understand you do not cut yourself to prosperity. Cutting taxes does not do anything for us to be able to invest in the needs of the people. And so let's have a robust tax policy. Let's have a tax policy that recognizes who is really benefiting. Let's have a tax policy that can fund the needs of the people of New Jersey, and most importantly, fund the needs of Black New Jerseyans who have always been left behind and at long last deserve at least the courtesy and the ability to know that they live in a state that not only cares about them, but wants to see them succeed. And so it is an incredible joy and privilege to be able to do this work with my colleagues at the UVA, but also with all of you. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate you, man. I'm going to bring somebody before us right now. I don't know if there's any pastor in the state or across the country who does more work than this brother that I'm getting ready to introduce. He realizes that the work of the church is not only on Sunday, but it also occurs Monday through Saturday. I value his opinion. Great guy to be in the trenches with. We've talked to everybody across the state, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whoever we got to talk to move the ball for our folks. We have been there to do that, and he has been side by side with us. Again, nobody better to be in the trenches with. Love this brother. I appreciate him. I respect him. And I'm so glad that he's a part of the United Black Agenda, and that's none other than Reverend Charles F. Boyer. Doctor?
Thank you, my brother. It is a blessing to be with you all today. I bring you greetings from Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Woodbury, New Jersey, and unashamedly Black Liberation Gospel Movement. I bring you greetings from Salvation and Social Justice, a Black faith-rooted advocacy organization in which we engage this work with the UVA. I bring you greetings from the Gloucester County NAACP, where I'm privileged to serve as first vice president under the leadership of President Loretta Winters. And I can't thank my brother Richard Smith enough. He is a friend, a dear friend that I will go into any battle with. And I mean, our love is deeper than brothers. And I so much appreciate him and his leadership, and deeply appreciate the work of the entire state conference. So many of you, I saw check in on the chat of the various local chapters that we have worked with over the years. So I have massive love for the work of the NAACP, and particularly as an African Methodist Episcopal minister, the tight connectivity between our dual histories. And the work of the UBA for me is a deeply spiritual work. It is a brotherhood and a sisterhood, I think, that is forged in the fight for Black lives. It is forged in the fight for our humanity to be recognized and valued. And so this has been one of the greatest privileges, certainly of my entire life, to be in the trenches with Richard and with all of the brothers and sisters that you have heard from today. Very quickly, I just wanted to thank President Smith for highlighting many of the things that we worked to get past, such as racial impact, independent prosecutor, solitary confinement. Most recently, we worked because of the COVID crisis, New Jersey had the deadliest prisons in the nation in regards to the coronavirus. And the day after the election, 2,000 people will be released from prison because of our advocacy. And before January 4th, an additional 1,000 people. And so, sisters and brothers, as you are all, and I'm having the same conversation with Black churches all throughout the state, as chapters are strategically in every single one of these communities, the more we can do to help people return safely, the way you can use your local city and municipal contacts in order to open up housing and opportunity and training for people, please do, because our folks need our help. In regards to some of the pressing needs that we currently see, in this COVID, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor moment, we really need to make some changes right here in New Jersey. And I'm so grateful because being in this fight with Richard, we were fighting in this space long before George Floyd. We responded to the unjust deaths that were taking place here in New Jersey, the unjust use of force, which is where the independent prosecutor law came from. New Jersey has its own issues. We need not look across the country to see abusive power. We can look right here in our own backyards. And so here in New Jersey, we need to change the deadly force standard. I ask all of you, please engage A4526. Please engage A4526. We need to change the deadly force standard. Encourage your local representatives to sign on to that. Push the speaker to post it for a hearing. We need to change qualified immunity. We need to severely restrict it. We need to get at police officers' pensions when they recklessly take somebody's lives. We need to prop up the community accountability boards in a way. We saw what happened in New Jersey Supreme Court, so now we must do it through legislation. So please support A4656 and S2963, and we lift up the great work of the NAACP, which had been on the front line with those accountability boards for so long, y'all. And now we, all of us together, must back them up because the forces of the state have kicked back. Now we must use our collective power in order to bring forth this change through legislation. We have to continue to work to divert funds into alternative first responses. We do not need a guy with a gun showing up to every mental health situation, to substance use situations. Over 90% of the calls that go in to police have nothing to do with anything violent. And it is up to us in our local communities to begin to change who comes on the scene. And so we'll be doing some local work around that, but I'm asking everyone in their local context, work to change that right where you are. We have to abolish the drug war. This year, coming up, 21, will mark the 50th anniversary of Nixon declaring the drug war. Nixon declared the drug war in June of 1971. We're working to build a coalition now, sisters and brothers, that will work to abolish the drug war on the 50th anniversary. And so, sisters and brothers, we pray that you all engage with that, because instead of responding to people's substance use issues with the criminal justice system, we ought to respond to those issues with a public health approach. And that brings us right to the great fight the NAACP has been involved in this marijuana discussion. Marijuana is on the ballot. But sisters and brothers, if we don't do work beyond the ballot, the very thing that Richard and I and so many of you fought for desperately up front will totally be undone. If we don't fight in the enabling legislation push afterwards to make sure that our folks are at the table, to make sure that folks' records are immediately expunged, to make sure that the tax revenue was done in a reparations mindset, we will have done one of the greatest systemic, racially unjust, perverted things in all of New Jersey's history. And so the way that I'm talking, sisters and brothers, is a way that some of our colleagues may not talk. If Hakeem was arrested for distribution, Hakeem should be able to get in the market and not be taxed. And Biff should be taxed at a high rate. And Biff's tax revenue ought to go to help Hakeem get his business started. You can't put Hakeem in prison on Wednesday and give Biff a legal, every kind of tax break incentives to sell the same exact thing, state sanctioned, on Thursday. And so we have to be in the fight to make sure that all of this is done in a racially just way. The last piece that I want to lift up, and I'm so appreciative for the time and the opportunity to be here for all of you sisters and brothers, is that healthcare is a human right. We have to make sure that we get healthcare expanded within the state of New Jersey to all those that don't have it. And one of the most critical ways that we can do that in the near future is that open enrollment is about to start next month. And we all know the Trump administration has done everything it can to unwind the Affordable Care Act. And sisters and brothers, there's so many that qualify for it that are not taking advantage. And so I ask that as we reach out to you all in the coming weeks around helping with Affordable Care Act enrollment, that you would please pick up the phone and answer the emails, because the work, the proximity, the prowess, and the reputation of the NAACP is thoroughly critical in making sure that we get our people covered. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man. Crystal, did Reva, was she able to connect?
No, no, we weren't able to get Reva on.
Well, listen, we want to give a shout out to Reva Foster. If Jerome Harris is the godfather, Reva Foster is our godmother, because she has been in this fight for the long haul of the years and has always been there calling for us to unite as Black leadership. And I know that she was so very, very happy and proud when we were able to do that. So listen, I think that you've heard from a great group of folk with some really good information that you can take back and utilize in your various branches across the state. So when folks come to you and ask you what the NAACP is doing or what the UBA is doing, you should be able to give answers very, very quickly and tell folks that they need to educate themselves if they think by chance that we are not doing anything. We have to be strategic. We got to be pragmatic with this fight. Anything that we encounter, we got to get something out of it. How small, how large, you got to get something out of every fight that we have. We have to talk to everybody. We are a nonpartisan organization, yet very political. And as we move across the state as Black leadership, and we go to various cities or we go to various counties, we have to deal with who you elected or who you failed to get out of office. So if you don't like who's running your city or running your county, register, educate, mobilize, energize, get them out. In the meantime, we are subjected to have to talk to whoever's there. So when we get a lemon, we got to make lemonade. So, we try to be pragmatic, try to be strategic in this fight. And when you look at the work and the things that have been accomplished over these past 3 years of us working together and changing the lives of thousands of folks that we will never see or ever talk to, thousands of lives have been changed because of the work that the UBA has done and the NAACP across the state of New Jersey and across the country. So again, thank all of you. I hope that you leave here motivated, energized to continue to do this work and fight the good fight, because when we fight, we win. Madam Chair, it's all back to you.
All right, so thank you again, United Black Agenda. New Jersey is so well represented by the leadership of everyone who has spoken on this panel. And so again, sometimes being strategic doesn't mean you're out on Twitter like other people who call themselves leaders think that that's the only way to get some shine. Sometimes the biggest decisions are happening, in spaces that you may not see or hear, but lives are being changed, lives are being impacted. And so we thank every one of you for your continued service, your commitment to this work of civil rights and social justice. And as I said at the very beginning of this convention, our expectation is that everybody leaves these forums better educated and, more importantly, better equipped to actually mobilize and join in and do the work beside our leaders. And so we thank you all for getting on, but we sincerely thank you for being on and thank you for your work. At this time, I will turn it over to our technical team, Rochelle, for the next set of instructions. And once again, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Love you, UBA.